Welcome back to Inside Sendium, our short series where we talk with the people behind Sendium about SMS infrastructure, open source telecom software, and the thinking that shapes the project. I'm Dimitris Petrakis, community manager at Sendium, and today I'm very happy to be joined by Stelios Mavromichalis, CTO and Owner at Cytech. In our first episode, we started with a big question: why does Sendium exist? Today, we continue that conversation from a more technical and strategic perspective. Stelios brings the view of someone who works close to the architecture, the engineering decisions, and the real-world requirements behind telecom software. So our topic today is from telecom experience to open source infrastructure and why the SMS market needs more transparency and control. We'll talk about what years of telecom experience teach you, why infrastructure should not always be treated as a black box, what open source can bring to messaging technology, and how Sendium fits into a market where many teams still depend on legacy systems, closed platforms, or integrations that are difficult to evolve. Stelios, welcome to Inside Sendium. It's great to have you here for the second episode.
Thank you for having me. Dimitris, I think it's going to be a tough task fitting all this in a short time.
Yeah,
but
we will try to manage. Okay, so for Stelios, for people who may not know you yet, could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us what your role is at Cytech and Sendium?
Sure. So I hold a computer science degree. I'm a co-founder at Cytech. I used to be a backend lead developer, and now I'm the CTO in Cytech. On Sendium, I'm actually the steward, meaning that the king and the leader is the community, as we believe so, in Sendium and open source projects.
Okay, and how long have you been involved in telecom and messaging infrastructure?
Well, for quite some time, to be honest, since before we established Cytech in 2001. So I've been here for long.
Okay, so 2001. So from your experience, what are some of the biggest changes that you have seen in the SMS and messaging industry over the years?
Oh, quite a lot. A lot of things in telecoms and messaging has happened throughout these years. I'll just mention a few. I've been since before IRC and ICQ, and then capacity on networks have risen, and so video conferences became a thing. But since there were network issues, Skype resolved most of them. You can recall that back. And then smartphones came into view, which brought a lot of changes in the scenery, like especially in messaging. And it's the dawn of over-the-top, like Viber, Messenger. And nowadays we're in workspaces. We moved into cloud, and a lot of changes. The ecosystem grew, not just messaging, and like Google Workspaces, AWS, Microsoft, and we've witnessed the birth and death of premium SMS. Yeah, unfortunately, and of course we've witnessed non-telecoms software companies like Google trying to get into dominating the SMS with, for instance, RCS. We've witnessed SMS company consolidation. We're now in a maturity maybe phase of that. And hopefully we're witnessing Canal next day, which hopefully would be Sendium.
Okay, and what made you feel that a project like Sendium was needed?
Yeah, well, there are more than a few things, but I'll just focus on two categories mainly. The evolution of technology and of course, the evolution of our needs led us to create this apart from others. On technology, of course, the evolution on tooling, uh, programming languages, we need to have them to be more safer and reachable as that more people are proficient and easy to program with.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, cloud is a recent development that everyone needs to adapt and be ready for it. And in our case, native, cloud native. And the needs, we need more control, especially in routing, because things get a bit complex as business grows.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have this flexibility. Of course, features like on-the-fly reconfiguration that were missing from tools in the past. Easy adaptation in telecom environments, which is very versatile and not an easy fit, even though it is supposed to be governed by standards. Easy extension of the software, like you can add tweak a couple of things which is related to the tooling I mentioned a bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, easy to deploy and be cloud native.
Cloud native.
That's some of the reasons that led us to create Sendium
Okay.
on the technical side, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and business.
And why was open source the right direction for Sendium?
A just question. Well, in my mind, it was one way, maybe the only way. Open source is, by its nature, is transparent. Okay, which means that everyone can audit and evolve, alter the code, bring it to its special needs, and this leads to trust eventually,
Mm-hmm.
which I think it is a very important ingredient of our era and the future.
Okay. And Stelios, can you tell us why does the SMS market need more transparency and control?
Yeah, like I just mentioned, traffic that goes through is sometimes sensitive, like one-time passwords.
Mm-hmm.
Trust is something that needs to be there. Transparency, as I mentioned a bit earlier, is a key ingredient that open source brings to the table by its nature.
Especially
That's
when you
the
have like data that is very essential, like that have to do with security, as you mentioned, one-time passwords and so on and so forth. So it is
yeah,
important for somebody to not have a black box and know exactly what is happening during the process, right? Yeah.
correct.
Okay, wonderful. And I would like to ask you, how can companies actually modernize their SMS infrastructure without throwing away everything they already have?
Now that's a tough question, but in our case, we have considered this. We built Sendium as a Canal drop-in replacement because lots of systems are based on Canal in our
Mm-hmm.
industry. Also, we've built Sendium to coexist and cooperate with all existing messaging systems,
Mm-hmm.
either via industry standard protocols like SMPP or even via proprietary protocols of some known system, or as I mentioned before, Canal. And of course, since it is open source, it can be easily altered and extended by the community itself. Of course, we're there to support it, but yeah,
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what is the one thing you would want people to remember about Sendium?
the one thing. Well, Sendium is here to solve your long-standing problems, and I think that it's worth a shot to just test it and give us your feedback. Tell us your experience. We're here to work with you.
Okay, wonderful. Stelios, thank you very much for joining this episode of Inside Sendium. I think this was a very useful conversation because it connects two things that are sometimes treated separately, like real telecom experience and the need for more open, transparent, and controllable infrastructure. SMS may be a mature technology, but the systems behind it still need to evolve. And as we discussed today, open source is not just about access to code, it is also about trust, as you just said, visibility, flexibility, and giving technical teams more ownership over the infrastructure they depend on. Now, for everyone watching, Sendium is open source, so you can explore the project on GitHub, read the documentation, test it, and join the conversation. This was Inside Sendium. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another short conversation behind the project. Stelios, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye, everyone.
Take care.